Hello everyone, in this video I'm going to talk about Web REST API, and this is a video for beginners and from beginners, so please bear with me. And first I want to say that there is a lot of different types of API and even different types in Web API, and they can have different architecture, they can use different transfer protocol, and then we need them for different purposes. But basically, if you will think about it like API is interface that will combine two software. What about REST API? REST API has some characteristic, like first it works with hypertext transfer protocol. It's URI based and it uses internet media types like JSON or XML. But you see this funny picture here, it's because there is no one definition for REST, but I prefer to keep with it because it's understandable. What question you can have and where you can be confused is that actually site also work with hypertext transfer protocol, site also has URIs, and site work with media type HTML, right? But site what can help you to see the difference is site has two sides, client and server, right? And API is just a server. API know nothing about the client, basically, in common cases, so that is different. And in case with API, what also can be very helpful for you, that client work with API like with database. So I think if you will think about like that API is like a database for the client, this confusion that you can have can be gone. But why you may need API? And first, if you're working on some project and you need data, you can use API like Facebook API or Twitter API or Google Maps API, right? Just to grab the data that you need. Or if you have a lot of data and you want to share this data with other services, you can be API publisher in these cases, and you can provide access to your data through the API. And again, if your project is very big, API will help to scale this project. Yeah, before we will go to the HTTP request and response, let's look at the example of API, and let's go, for example, to the Facebook. So we have here page, right? What we usually can see, but we can easily get it by API, just like so. Right, so we have here the same data, but in different format, in JSON format, and this is basically Facebook API. So we just send a request by this URL and get the answer. And what we can do, we even can use something like that. So basically we can set what fields we want to get. Like in this case, we want to get ID, about, and likes count, and we will get it. So this is example of a Facebook API. Let's come back to our HTTP request and response. Let's look of the structure. and then we will look again on the Facebook example. Okay, so client will send HTTP request to the server, and server will answer with the HTTP response. And very basic, but let's just repeat it. So what we will have in HTTP request, we will have headers, right? Cookies. Cookies can be used for authorization. Then we will have method, HTTP method, or you can also read something like HTTP verb. This is the same. So basically this is our get, post, patch, etc. Of course, we will have URL, and in case of API, you can read term endpoint, and we will have our data here in the body. And server will answer it. In the answer, it will contain also headers. Of course, it will contain status, and it will contain data. Can contain or cannot. So let's look again of the example with this Facebook. Let's refresh it and looks how it looks like. So here is our request, right? Here is our URL, here is our HTTP verb, and additional headers. And here is our response. So we can see that status of this response is 200, okay, so it's good. And a lot of different headers is also here. And here is our body in response. So basically this is our JSON object. So in case when you use just simple get method, HTTP method, you just can use it like this, but when you will do something more difficult, when you need to have post, right, or put, you can use Postman extension for Chrome. So basically you just put here URL, you choose the method like get, you send it, and you get the result. So you see here we have a lot of HTTP verbs you can use. You can save it here just to go back next to the same request. We can have here different type of authorization. So when you will work with API, this plugin can be very helpful. Okay, let's move to the next slide, and here is the Richardson maturity model, and it can be a little bit confused for the beginners, but we will return to this model during our presentation. So I will try to explain it very simple. So basically this is 4 levels of techniques that you can use working with API, and basically this is the progress, all right? So when developers just start creating API, they just didn't know how to do this properly, and they basically bore on this SWAM in level 0. So I would say there is no techniques here. Endpoint can be very difficult, etc. But then the first thing that people start think about, and this is create multiple resources. So basically create different URLs for different purposes. And the URLs can be look like this. For example, Facebook, I don't know, articles get. So something like get all articles, or Facebook article 1 update. And here we can send our data to update. So it was a progress. But the thing is that we have action directly in the URL, right? And that is what is this level 1 about. What developers do next, they thought we already have HTTP verbs, and why do not use it? So instead of having something like articles1 update, we just can send articles1, and if we will send get, we will get this article. If we will send, I don't know, patch, we will update this article, right? So basically action moved to the HTTP verb. And the level 3 is most complicated. Yeah, let me try to explain it. So basically you have one endpoint, like for example, I don't know, articles, right? So you get information by this endpoint, and you can get something again, can be JSON or XML object, and in this object you will find URLs for different purposes. So it's not like you know that you need to use article/1 to get, or like get, right, or article/1 to update this article number 1, or so, right? Or every URLs you will get from first request. That is from one side it's a little bit difficult, right? But from other side you how to say it? Well, it basically like self-documented because you should not support your documentation, right? You just have one root endpoint and come from that endpoint and find any action that you may need. I'm sorry if I was a little bit confused, but you can go directly to this page on Martin Farwer site and read this article. It's not so big. Okay, so as I said before, you can think about your API as a database and base actions for working with database. There are create, read, update and delete, right? This is basically our CRUD. And as I said before, an API, we will use REST API, we will use HTTP verbs, and they are like post, get, put, delete. Of course, we can have, and we have more HTTP verbs, and we have not only these CRUD actions. And usually people ask, so are they like create this is post, read this is get, update this is put? Yes, you can think about that like so, but it's not there is no one way to say that. So you can find different specification and different realization of that. So you could not say directly that CRUD is this post, get, pull, delete actions. But it can helpful at the beginning to understand how it works. Okay, so if you're already ready to start work on the API, you can have next questions like what URLs should I use for API, what format, right? What method should I use and when? What API should return, and what I should do in case of the errors. And all these questions are very valid. But if you're going to answer on these questions, it can take a lot of time, and I don't recommend you to do this because developers with a big experience already did this, and you can find different specification where you can find answers on all these questions. And one from specifications that I like and I use, this is JSON API. This is basically the link. You can go. So link is JSONAPI.org. And let's just look on some examples and what this specification says. So first we will start with create method, and let's look at the example of the request and of the response. So in case of create any models, you need to send a request with HTTP web post to the URL like names of your models. For example, if article, it could be articles in plural. You need to send headers, right, with type, and you need to set the data in in object data. And if API will create this model without any errors, it will answer with the code 200, and it will return this model but already with ID, for example, right? So this is an example of create. Let's look on the read data. So to read data, JSON API proposed to use get method and URL like models. In this case, we have articles. And in response, you will get list of these models in data object. So here is one article, another. So this is the format that you will get with data, right? Next is update. For update, JSON API proposed to use patch method, and URL can be like articles1, and here we will send our data, and server will again respond us if everything will be okay with 200, and it will return us the data. And in case if delete, we need to send method delete. Again, you can see here the same URL, so model ID. And again, if everything will be okay, server will answer with 200. This is very, very basic. And in a real project, you will ask, you will have question like what to do with submodels, what to do with different attributes. You will have a lot of questions, but JSON API mostly answer on this question. So just go to this site and read documentation. Again, it's not so big, but it will be very, very helpful in your project. And the last thing that I want to show from the JSON API specification is the example of answer in case of error. So let's say client will send to you delete and this URL, and let's say that client is not allowed to delete this particular model. So in this case, server should return code 403 forbidden, right, and description in errors object. Okay, so you know now a little bit about API and how to start. How to actually start. So first, choose specification that you will follow. Again, don't create it by yourself. It's a lot of work. Then think what your API will receive and what it will send. So what actually data you want to share, what data you will open to editing, right? This question should come to your mind. And the last but not least is create documentation, because again API is only one side, server side, but you also will have client, and if you will not provide documentation, your client could not communicate with you, right? Because he will know what to send, when to send, etc. So documentation is critical for API project. And here is how to can work with documentation. First, you can create this manual as usual. Just create some document and describe all URLs, methods, and format of data. Then you can use some scripts that will generate documentation by your models, for example. And you can go even more in the future. And what you can do, you can write documentation, and by that documentation, script can create models, so basically database, and it can create completely API. So basically you just write documentation, and your database and API, URL, everything will be created by this documentation. But if you junior, if you didn't work before with API, start with manual documentation just to understand it better. Okay, so I think we are ready to our little task, and I will give you one example and will ask you, what do you think about that? So, for example, we have our site, and on our site we have 2 pages, 2 forms. One form, it can be user can work with it, and this is like a form where user can change his data, like for example first name and last name. And the other page, it can be visible only for admin, and on that page admin can approve or disapprove the user. So what I propose to have next URLs for our API, because it will work with API. First, for this form, for this page, we can have something like API version 1, users, ID of this users, change personal data, and for the second we can have something like API version 1, users ID approve. So that is what I propose for you, and I give you some time, and you can just set pause and think, do you think is it right or is it not? And let's start from the beginning. And let's remember what we said you can be confused if you worked with site before and didn't work with API. And because site has 2 sides, right, client and server, but API is just the server. And when you create API, you should not think about client. So here, when I described what pages, what forms, etc., I described client. And API should not think about the client. So basically, just even don't look at the interface, etc. You work on API, not on interface. So we don't care what pages on site, we don't care what forms on site, we just don't care about that. Second confusion that goes here, because we thought, okay, we have 2 forms and we need 2 URLs because it's something different, right? Here we will change data, here we will approve client, but it was again the confusion. And first let's look at our URL. You see that in our URL we have actions, change personal data and approve. And do you remember our model that I showed you before? Let's return back to it. So we basically something like here. We don't use HTTP verbs, right? So let's come back to this example and let's think what would be the right question for the API. So you need to think, okay, what model, with what model I need to work, and this model is user, right? In both cases you will work with user. Just in first case you are going to change data, some data, personal, and in second case you are going to change this flag, approve or not approve, but it's here everything is user data. Then you need to think, okay, what action will be here, and again in both cases this will be update action, right? We just update the user. So this is our answer. And if we are going to use JSONAPI, we just look that update need to, by update we need to use patch HTTP verb, and our URL will be like API version 18 users. Here is our models, and here is our user ID, right? And just for case where user will change personal information, your client will send your data object like ID1, types user and first name and last name. And in case when admin will change this approval flag, your client need to send something like ID1, types user and approval true or false. So you see from that that if you are API developer, don't think about interface, don't think about client. Just think about your data that you are going to share with your client. And the question that you can ask here is, what if user will change the request, and here he will also send something like approval true, right? Well, he can, the user can do this even with this Postman plugin. So think about what we can do here. And basically API, of course, should not trust to the data that it receives, right? It should validate it. And in case if a client will send you the data, and this client is not allowed to change this data, our server should answer with the error, right? So basically in this case we just need to set in our response 403, right, and add some description or why this error happened. Basically we can write that you are not allowed to change this data or something like that. Okay, I hope we are clear with this. And last slide that I have is some question that I found funny. That question are from beginners, and here is the one. You can ask what exactly fields you need from API, and again, especially if you are working on public API, so it's not very clear who are you asking for, because client should not tell you what fields, what models, etc. You need to decide. You, developer of API, need to decide what data will be open for reading, for editing, and for whom, for what client, right? So it's up to you. Don't ask such question. Don't ask such question. The second one is even more funniest for me. It's something like in my API data, in my response, I will return first name and last name in one field, and it will be field full name. Okay, but again, API is like a database for the client. So when you send the request to your database, you expect to receive fields as they are in database, alright? If your database will change format, will change fields, you will not like it, right? So don't decide for your client what to do with the data. Just return the data that this client can have, because maybe client will want to use only first name or only last name. It's not up to you to decide, it's up to client. Up to you to decide is what to send to this particular client. And the next question can be like that. So, okay, for example, in case when a client did something that would create an error, I need to return this error. But everything on my side, every errors, they looks like red background, red color, right? And I need to send something like this: div class alert, alert error, then my message and end of the div. Okay, but do you remember that API is not the site, right? You should remember that. Do you remember what format you use? So in case if you're going to use JSON API, your answer should be in JSON. So no HTML. Again, you should work with data and you should not change this data. Client should think about interface, about stylus, etc., but not you. Because when for example, again, with public API situation, later some other site will work with your API, and this site can have different stylus, different classes, etc. So don't do this mistake. Just work. Your API should work with plain data in this case. Okay, so we are on the end of our presentation, and I want thank you very much for your attention. And if you have any questions or if you are not agree, please send me a message, please let a comment, and thank you. Bye bye.